my honor to welcome you to the 75th Annual Father of the Year Awards Luncheon. As a not-for-profit organization, the National Father's Day Committee, part of the Father's Day Mother's Day Council, not only honors great dads and raises the profile of Father's Day, it also channels funds raised by these annual awards luncheons to help meaningful philanthropies dealing with issues affecting fathers, mothers, and children. To date, the Council has donated nearly $30 million to deserving family-related charities nationwide. We are pleased to be donating the proceeds of today's luncheon to Save the Children's U.S. programs.
I'm very honored to be here, so I'd like to thank my family very much. My grandfather was an amazing dad to my father, and he was an amazing grandfather to me. And family was always first. And I'm just very honored and privileged to have the family I do. Thank you.
First of all, thank the committee for thinking of me, for honoring me. I feel so lucky being here because I know it's a gift. I thank all of you, the Father's Day Committee, and the mothers too that are a part of this. Thank you so much. I'll continue to help the organization along for care for the children. Take care.
A star NFL quarterback, the Vice President of the United States, a Master Sergeant, and a business executive walk into a ballroom. Two Joes, a Jerry, and a Christopher. What do we have in common? We're all dads. In the most important way, we are the same. I want to thank everyone for coming here today and supporting Save the Children, an organization that Mark mentioned we've been involved with for over a decade together. A great organization. And of course, for honoring two Joes, a Christopher, and a Jerry. Thank you.
It all starts and ends with our children. That's what fatherhood and motherhood's about, by my father's standard. He used to say, in an expression, he said, you know your success as a father, and the same would be for a mother. If you turn and look at your child, and you realize they turned out better than you. So that's the base on which I will accept this great honor, not because I deserve it in the context of being a globally great father, but because, by my dad's standard, I'm a success because my kids all turned out better. Thank you very, very much for this honor.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Dan Orwig, and as President and CEO of the Father's Day Mother's Day Council, it's my honor to welcome you to the 75th Annual Father of the Year Awards Luncheon. At this time, I'd like to ask everyone to please rise for the singing of our national anthem by the New Amsterdam Boys and Girls Choir. Thank you. That was wonderful. This is the New Amsterdam Boys and Girls Choir, 4th year performing in our event. Always love having the kids here to celebrate with us. A special thanks to the director, James Backman. As we begin our program, please feel free to enjoy your lunch. I would like to personally thank everyone here today for your support as we celebrate the Father's Day holiday, and congratulate the 2016 Father of the Year honorees, the Ashok C. Sani All-Star Dad, Master Sergeant Christopher Irving, NFL Hall of Fame quarterback Joe Namath, CEO of Hudson's Bay Company Jerry Storch, and the Vice President of the United States, Joe Biden, who will be joining us a little bit later in the program. I would like to take a moment to express my appreciation and gratitude to this year's sponsors, and a special thanks to our presidential sponsors, Hudson's Bay Company, G3 Apparel Group, Peerless Clothing, PVH Corporation, and the Sani Family Foundation. Thank you for all that you do to make this event possible. So we have an extremely exciting milestone event this year. We are proud to celebrate these men whose strong dedication to their families, careers, and public service are representative of what all parents should aspire to achieve. I hope you've had a chance to walk through and experience our 75-year history in the general reception to get a sense of not only the breadth of our past honorees, but how extraordinary and impactful this event has been. Since 1931, when the Father's Day Council was organized, we've recognized more than 500 outstanding dads. We're delighted to have some of them here with us today. If you could please rise when I call your name. Ronnie Wurtzberger. Ken Dwayne. Ken Dwayne. Brendan Hoffman. Michael Satola. Mr. Joe Rivers. Big Joe. One more guy, Mark Schreiber. Gentlemen, thank you for joining us here today. We will be live tweeting today's event. It's pretty advanced for us. Excuse me? Oh, I'm going to blame my communications team for not giving me one reminder. Thank you, Richard. Morris Goldfarb, please stand. 2015 Father of the Year. Please forgive me, Morris. Okay, so we will be live tweeting. So if you'd like to join the conversation, give a special congratulatory message to our honorees, you can follow us on Twitter and Instagram at FOTY_awards and use the hashtag FOTY Awards 2016. So post some pictures and be sure to tag us. Father's Day and the Father of the Year Awards have a long and special history about which many of you are probably not aware. The concept of Father's Day was first introduced in 1910 by Mrs. John Bruce Dodd, a Seattle woman who wanted to honor her father and all American dads after the death of her mother. It was widely accepted but rarely observed holiday until Presidents Wilson and Coolidge formally recognized it in 1931. 21 years after Mrs. Dodd first came up with the idea, the Father's Day Council was organized. The council has recognized many fathers throughout this long history. If you haven't already, I invite you to take a few minutes after the luncheon to enjoy the exhibits in the reception area where past honorees are celebrated with pictures throughout each decade, listening stations with literally hundreds of hours of audio from past events, featuring excerpts from incredible honorees like Mickey Mantle, Ed Sullivan, as well as Presidents Ronald Reagan and Gerald Ford, just to name a few. So please enjoy these treasures from our archives. Now I'd like to share with you a brief video that features a few of these special men we have honored with this award over the years.
You know how kids walk around with the Bill of Rights in the diaper, he knows what he's entitled to. 6 o'clock Sunday morning, he's sticking his finger in your eye. Hey, wake up, pal. You promised to take me to the zoo today. Are you a pal or aren't you? Up!
Affection and love, one for another. I think it's something that exists in the heart of the fathers all over this country. And perhaps in the busy stress of our days, the problems, it's appropriate that we remember that feeling and give special honor to it.
But as fathers and mothers, it's impossible to delegate this responsibility, and our children ultimately will learn that happiness only comes in service to others.
You know, it feels kind of nice because I've been struggling most of this year, and you know you're a father when your kids look at you and go, "Daddy, you're still all right." You know, it's still okay.
Ward's, like millions of other immigrants, he lived a life of quiet heroism, content to see his children thrive, even perhaps someday to grow up to be recognized and applauded like today.
And I hasten to inform the men of the motion picture industry, or remind them that before I was a father, I was a son.
A home is what really counts, not a house. A home is a mother and a father. Parents that care, and parents that love, and parents that sacrifice.
I only hope that all of those parents knew that I cared just as much for the lives of their sons and daughters, and I would do everything possible to protect their lives, just as I do everything possible to protect the lives of my kids.
I think our greatest duty as human beings is to do the most we can to teach our children to take care of their children and to take care of this planet. I thank you for honoring me.
Last winter I received quite a few awards, and all of them were appreciated very much, but I think this is probably the greatest thing that's ever happened to me. Thanks a lot. Good luck.
That was amazing, amazing, unbelievable history. On the last slide, we saw a mention of Bruce Roberts. I'd like to talk about him for a few minutes. I want to take a moment to remember Bruce Roberts, a founding member of the Executive Committee, industry legend, and dear friend of the Council. As a man of reason, most, if not all, major decisions governing the Council have been overseen by Bruce. He was a fair and firm man. You could always, and we often did, get advice from Bruce on our most difficult decisions. His mentorship to our committee and its leaders has been invaluable. He truly was our benchmark Father of the Year. Several of Bruce's family members are here today. I would like to take a moment to recognize his sons, Rick, Conrad, and Brett, and their families. Where are they? There they are, right in the middle. I'd like to personally offer our condolences and gratitude. Thank you. As a not-for-profit organization, the National Father's Day Committee, part of the Father's Day Mother's Day Council, not only honors great dads and raises the profile of Father's Day, it also channels funds raised by these annual awards luncheons to help meaningful philanthropies dealing with issues affecting fathers, mothers, and children. To date, the Council has donated nearly $30 million to deserving family-related charities nationwide. In today's world, when so many families are struggling just to survive, underprivileged children need our help more than ever. We are pleased to be donating the proceeds of today's luncheon to Save the Children's U.S. programs, which heroically provides hope and aid to those who need it most. We're so proud to partner with Save the Children again this year. So, yes. Thank you. I can personally speak to how impactful Save the Children's work really is. I had read about all the work that they do, heard about all the work from Mark, but I really wanted to feel it. So we organized a field trip to Mississippi with some fellow committee members. Mark joined us, as well as Save the Children's field team based in Mississippi. Let me tell you, I felt it. The town we visited was Duncan, Mississippi. Population, 417. Average income, $11,962. We had a chance to visit 2 schools and visit 2 families that Save the Children supports, and our donations helped to fund. Hard to explain what I took away from this trip. It was shocking, to say the least. To see the conditions in which these families with young kids live, parents typically uneducated and living in extreme poverty. While loving, these parents oftentimes don't understand the importance of nurturing the young mind. The homes have few, if any, books, and certainly no computers. The schools we visited would be considered safe havens, as they were clean, food was provided, there were computers and books. At one of the schools, we had a chance to sit with the kids in the Save the Children sponsored classroom that provides books, computers, and other learning activities. We were able to see firsthand the excitement and energy these young minds have when given the real opportunity. I'd like to share one quick anecdote with you from the trip. During one of our home visits, we approached a trailer home, which was terribly run down. The backside of it was sinking into a swampy, marshy area. As we approached the home, we noticed a young girl hanging out of the door, proudly clutching something. Yes, she was hanging out of the door, which was a screen door with no screen or window. As we got closer, we could see she was holding an Elmo book that she had received through Save the Children's donations. Akiri was her name. She was so excited to show off her book and have it read to her. Each of us on that trip had a chance to read Elmo to Akiri. As we sat in the dilapidated home with the young parents, we were thrilled to see her enthusiasm about reading, but saddened to learn that this book was the only book in the home. Through the continued work of Save the Children, supported by the money raised here today, we can help assure that this little girl and others like her will continue to have access to books, computers, and other learning tools. There were some shocking facts that Mark shared with me during the trip. He explained that children living in poverty who can't read at grade level by 3rd grade are 13 times less likely to graduate than their proficient, wealthier peers. And on average, children living in poverty have heard 30 million fewer words than their affluent peers by the time they turn 3. By intervening early in the development of these kids, we can truly make a difference. So I did feel it, and my takeaways were sadness for the struggling families in the town, happiness for the help that Save is providing to these families, pride to be part of an organization that is making such a difference, and humbled by the living conditions and lack of resources only a 2-hour plane ride away. So once again, thank you for being here today and helping make such a difference. Okay, as we turn to the awards portion of the luncheon, I would like to introduce today's Master of Ceremonies, Mark Shriver. Not only is Mark a good friend and a longtime supporter of the National Father's Day, Mother's Day Council, Mark is the president of Save the Children's Action Network and was a 2008 Father of the Year honoree. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Mark Shriver.
Good afternoon. Hello, good afternoon. we're at the 75th anniversary. It's a big celebration, and I've never looked better than with all those flags behind me. And coming from a big Irish Catholic family, I know Vice President Biden's going to join us in a little bit, but I like the look of Vice President of the United States in my picture. Looks good, right? My mother would be very excited right now. Dan, seriously, thank you so much for those incredible words about your trip down to Duncan, Mississippi. I was speaking with Mr. Namath in the reception beforehand, and he said how pleased he was that so much, all the dollars today were going to Save the Children. And he said, which is absolutely right, that there's need all across this country. You saw it in Duncan, Mississippi, but Save the Children is on Native American reservations in Colorado, in New Mexico, in Washington State, in communities in Kentucky and Alabama, which Mr. Namath and I talked a little bit about, all across this country. So what you saw and heard so beautifully from Dan and saw in those pictures is all across the United States. So thank you, Dan, for bringing that to life. And thank you all so much for coming. It is the 75th anniversary. It's an incredible honor. I have no idea why I was chosen to be the MC. I have been here before a couple times and made a lot of mistakes. So some of you may remember that when I introduced Jim Boeheim, the coach of Syracuse University, I mispronounced the name and called him Jim Boeheim or something like that. He got upset with me, and he never came back. Then one year, I introduced John Thain, the head of CIT, as John Thain, the head of Citibank. So that didn't go over so well. And then a couple of minutes later, Mr. Namath, I introduced Shaquille O'Neal as Dwight Howard. So that was all. The last one was a joke because I had put my foot in my mouth with John Thain. So anyways, when Dan asked me to do this today, he said, listen, there's going to be a little competition. This is a big deal. We got an incredible lineup. We got Christopher Irving, Jerry Storch. That was done by mistake. We got Joe Namath. We got Joe Biden. It's amazing. But you're going to have to compete to be the MC. So I said, what do you mean? He goes, it's down to you and Shaq. So they brought us both in, and I had to go first. And I said, well, listen, I was a Father of the Year. My dad was the Father of the year I was born. I wrote a book about my father called A Good Man. I just finished a book on Pope Francis. I think I'm pretty, I'm competent. So I sat down, and nobody in the committee looked at me at all. And Shaq got up and goes, that's all very good, but I'm going to tell you why I'm going to win. And he goes, you guys remember the time when I got the award and I told the story about our 7-year-old son who was losing on a basketball game. There's 2 minutes left, down by 8 points, and I said to the boys, if you win this basketball game, I'm taking everybody to Hooters. And all the guys on the committee nod their head, and he goes, listen, if you choose me, we're all going to Hooters later today. So Shaq, the only problem with Shaq is he forgot to check the date, so he was out of town, so I got the gig. So I am honored to be here. I made that all up, right, Dan? Yeah. I am honored to be here. It is an incredible lineup. It is the 75th anniversary. The Vice President is joining us as we heard, obviously, with the tragedy in Orlando over the weekend. President Obama called a meeting this morning that he had to attend, but he is on his way up here, so we're excited about his participation. Dan Orwig is a great friend, best dressed guy in this building, which is saying something. He's got that Vince Camuto suit on. He looks great. I got the Vince Camuto suit on. I don't look as good as Dan, but I'm happy to be here with him. The New Amsterdam Boys and Girls Choir, they were fantastic. Dan said to me on the way in, you've made some mistakes in the past. It's Vice President Biden, not Dick Cheney. I said, thanks, Dan. That's really helpful. So you heard a little bit about what Save the Children does, and I just want to say how we really do appreciate so much the support of the Mothers of the Year event and the Father of the Year event. It is critical to our work all across the country, helping young kids really from birth through the age of 8. Because if a kid is not reading, as Dan just told us, by grade level at the end of 3rd grade, they're going to really struggle. So it makes a profound difference, the dollars that are raised today, to help those kids enter kindergarten ready to learn, to survive man-made or natural disasters, which is what Save the Children also does all across this country and did here in this region after hurricane in the last couple of years. So it makes a really big difference, serving over 250,000 children and their families on an annual basis. Now, I have the worst part of the afternoon is this text-to-pledge concept, which we're going to try to raise a little bit more dough here. There are a few simple steps that I'm going to walk you through. Last year, we raised over $20,000 in the text-to-pledge. There are the steps on how to pledge. We're about $50,000 short of raising $1 million today. So I'm hoping that everyone will take out your phones and go through these very simple steps. We talked about it on the way in here. Richie Wurzberger offered to donate his seat, give it up if anybody wanted to donate $5 or $10 grand. We ran that by the Secret Service. They didn't find any humor in that offer. So we're not going to offer Richie Wurzberger's seat sitting next to Joe Namath. That would have been a pretty good prize. But here you go. You got to go on your cell phone, enter the number 203-309-0782 in the address line. I can see absolutely nobody is doing this. So can you just humor me and the people at your table? Take the phone out. You can send text or email now. It doesn't really matter. Type your name or your company name in there, the amount of the pledge, and any short message you want to share, okay? Or you can do it anonymously. So if you're going to give, $5 or $10, which makes a big difference, you can do it anonymously, no problem, and then just hit send. So we're going to wait for a second in a very awkward moment and see if there's anybody that's going to do this to take me off the hot seat. So, there we go. There's the first one. Matthew Youngs is given $1,000. There we go. And Paul Rosengard. Is that in honor of Paul Rosengard? P.S. Free Tom Brady. I don't know if this is the right audience to do that in front of, right? Okay, so we got $1,000 in honor of Tom Brady and Joe, and Jerry. There's some $500. So you can do this all during the meal. I'm only going to be able to say this one more time, but I hope you can help us out. We're trying to get to that $1 million, and we're 50 grand short of it. So I hope you'll take a look at it and start texting. We're, as I said, trying to get to 100% participation. So that's going to continue to roll, right, Dan? Yep. So there we go, $500. Thank you very much for that. It adds up, as I said last year, almost $20,000. All right, so we're going to get into the program. I get the honor of introducing Jack Essig, who is the Senior Vice President and Publisher of Hearst Men's Group, who will be presenting the 2016 Ashok Santi All-Star Dad Award, sponsored by Esquire Magazine and the Santi Family Foundation. Jack, come on up. Thank you.
Thanks, Mark. Thank you. Good to see you. Thank you, Mark. Ashok Santi was a beloved husband and father. While he considered his family to be his calling, he also had a deep commitment to giving equal recognition to all. His interests in ethics, truth, love, peace, nonviolence, compassion, and moral and social responsibility all live on through the Ashok Santi Scholarship in Residence program at New York University, and the Ashok Santi All-Star Dad Award, both of which are underwritten by the Santi Family Foundation. In the spirit of Ashok Santi, Esquire invited all of its readers to submit nominations for this year's All-Star Dad. The All-Star Dad Award honors a father who goes beyond being a responsible caregiver and a loving mentor. We look for a father who gives extraordinarily to his family and to the world around him. A man whose tireless efforts make life better for his children and for his community. This year, the National Father's Day Committee, Esquire Magazine, and the Santi Family Foundation have selected Master Sergeant Christopher Irving as the 2016 All-Star Dad. At this time, I would like to ask his son, Beckett, to come up and share his winning essay on why his father deserves this honor.
My all-star dad's career has taken him to the ends of the earth, to the gates of hell, and back again. I get honor, commitment, service. But before this last summer, I don't know how much I could really told you about the man my father is until now. My dad wore a uniform of an American airman to over 14 different countries, not to wave a flag over the people who live there, instead to show them that they have a right to their way of life. Liberty all humankind deserve, and the right to pursue happiness. He has been a leader of men, a survivor of war, and a friend. I heard the stories for the first time at my father's retirement in 2013. I still can't believe that the man who taught me how to ride a bike returned home with the Bronze Star. Master Sergeant Christopher Irving retired. My father could have went to be a Chief Master Sergeant. His commander commented, "He is choosing to take the hardest tasking of his life. He is choosing to be in the service of his family." Seeing my father rewarded the medal, hearing the words of his bravery and leadership, I realized his legacy is not just me and my 5 siblings, but the airmen he served with. Thank you.
Should I grab the award?
Yeah, you hand him the award, you're going to get a picture with him. Wait. There's a pin. You can just hold it up for him and take it back and forth.
Thank you, Beckett. Your father is truly an inspiration to all of us. At this time, I'd like to present you with your award.
You don't get my award. You just writing for me to get it. Here's the pin to add to all your others. All right. Thank you.
And there's another child on the way. So there you have it.
You can pretty much do what you want, buddy. Within reason. Well, you know, I was making people a little nervous because I had a Mountain Man beard a few days ago, and I think they were a little worried that they might have picked the wrong guy based on appearance, but not everything goes off appearance, does it? And it's really neat to see the Save the Children with the compassion, because people just don't really give your neighbor credit enough for the compassion that most people have. And if you don't have it, you're really missing out on a big part of life. So thank you very much for the group and the Save the Children. I thought I was at the wrong place because I thought it was Have the Children. But then they drugged me into the VIP room and plied me with a bunch of water, so it all worked out. I need to start out today with some thank yous. You know, I just have a wonderful family, and you know, just to take your time out of the day for my wife and my son Beckett to write a paragraph about me for this contest is just really neat, and I'm really honored, and it's very humbling that your family would just sit down, you know, hide from you and go away and do something behind your back for something really great. So I'm very honored to be here. So I'd like to thank my family very much, and thank you for the essay that you wrote for me. And I drug a few people with me. I asked if I could bring my commander that I served in Afghanistan with, Colonel Grant Hargrove, who's with my family over there, leader of men and leader of men, and a real honor to have served under him in a combat zone. When I called him up, he said, so why are you taking me to the 75th Annual Father's Day of the Year Award? And I said, and I didn't tell him this, but I lost my dad 6 weeks ago. And it was hard. It was the hardest thing I ever dealt with. And he's kind of my de facto dad, although we're about the same age. When you meet a role model in life, it doesn't matter what the age or whatever is. So he's kind of filling in for my dad. So he didn't know that until now. So during this whole thing, I was trying to think of what are we going to talk about? And I was, what the heck? I thought about my grandfather and my father, and two words that came to mind were legacy and balance. My grandfather was in World War II. He served as a Navy Seabee, and he was in the Pacific Islands at the age of 15. I guess it was pretty easy to just walk into a recruiter's office and find yourself in the service back then. And my grandfather was an amazing dad to my father, and he was an amazing grandfather to me. And family was always first. Everything else was second. Family was first. And I remember as a little kid, my grandpa had a tractor, and I was driving this tractor, and I ran this sucker full speed into a big oak tree in his yard, and the oak tree didn't budge. And I looked over at my grandpa, and I was like, "Grandpa, move that tree." And he laughed. And most people would be mad about you racking their $20,000 tractor into a tree, but he laughed because of what I said. And that legacy carried into my father, who was an outstanding man. Like I said, I lost him 6 weeks ago. He served 33 years quietly as a DoD scientist, designing things for the military to try to get men and women home alive and keep the rest of us safe. He was very successful. He was just a great man. But when I think about my grandfather and my father, they had two things right. They had balance because they loved us, they took the time with us, and they were very successful, hardworking men. And I think it's really applicable with the group that we have here today. Most people here are very hardworking, but do you have the balance? I hope that you do, because if you don't, what's your legacy? And I'm very lucky, I'm very blessed to come from those two men. My grandfather passed the legacy of being a good father to my father, and my father passed it to me. Apparently, that's what they say. So, I just like you all to think about it, and just, do you have the right balance? Everything's a balance in life. And are you balancing the career with your family? And my career got to the point where I was gone for about 8 years of it into a foreign country away from my family, and my balance was way off. And I hit the 20-year mark in the service where you become eligible to retire from it. And I looked at my grandfather and my father, and I said, my balance is off. I'm going to fix the balance. I'm going to shift it. And I shifted the balance toward my family, which unfortunately September 11th played a role in skewing my balance, because the Air Force was a lot different world until September 11th. But I gladly, for my country, did those 8 years in foreign countries. Afghanistan, Iraq, multiple times, Iraq, because that's what you do. That's what we do as Americans. And we see the Orlando attack. There'll be somebody out there that's going to do what we do as Americans and go off and take care of those problems. So I'm just very honored. I'm very blessed that I come from a family of a strong balance with family is the most important, and legacy is important. And I hope you weigh those two things as you leave here today. Support the foundations. They're awesome foundations. I know they were a little bit worried about what I was going to say, because I told them I was going to write it down last night at the cigar bar on a cocktail napkin, which I forgot over there. So, I'd like to thank Sunil and his family. His uncle must have been an amazing man for this event to be so successful and the support that it has. And I'm just very honored and privileged to have the family I do, the recognition that they sought, and I'd like to just thank New York for hosting this and being such a great place to visit. Thank you.
Thank you, Master Sergeant, for those great words. And Beckett, thank you so much for that incredible talk. And thank you, Master Sergeant, for reminding us all about your dad, our grandpas, and your commitment and service to the country in Iraq and Afghanistan. That was really incredible. Thank you very much. So I go back to the money again. This is it. Last time. You get the pledge up there. I think we're at $6,500, which is great. A little less than last year, so we're hoping we can pick it up, but that's the last time I'm going to say it. So I have the honor, thank you very much, from Ronnie and Poppy Wurzburger. We don't want Richie's seat. I could have a field day on that comment right there, but I'm going to leave it alone. But great, thank you very much. I have the honor of introducing our... I was offended that he didn't want to sit next to Joe. Yeah, you don't want to sit next to Joe Namath? Loves him. Mr. Wurzburger loves Joe Namath. All right, now that we've had a moment in the Wurzburger family, I guess we can move on. I have the honor of introducing Joe Namath, who everyone knows as Broadway Joe. He played for the legendary Bear Bryant down in Alabama, led him to a 29-4 record in the 1964 National Championship. He was the first pick in the AFL draft with the New York Jets and dominated New York for years and years. And without doubt, I think his guarantee of the victory in Super Bowl III against the heavily favored Baltimore Colts was one of the biggest moments in sports history, at least in the NFL sports history. Joe has always been a philanthropist, has been deeply involved in multiple charities, including the March of Dimes, for which he holds an annual golf celebrity tournament to raise money for research and solutions for the prenatal diseases. He's one of the all-time great NFL quarterbacks, a Hall of Famer, and more importantly, Joe has 2 daughters and 3 grandchildren. Will you all please give it up for the great Joe Namath, Father of the Year. That's on the other side, sorry.
Oh, there you go. Yay. There you go. Okay. Thank you, Mark. I do have a game plan here, folks. My background kind of leads me to make a plan. I didn't think it up, but some coaches did along the way. And if I didn't follow their advice, I was on my way. I want to, first of all, thank the committee for thinking of me, for honoring me with this award, designation, recognition of something I never planned on. I think of my father, and thank you again for affording me this award, fellas, because I don't think of my father enough, you know. I know I should think of him more, but I'm a firm believer everything starts at home. At home, we get influenced by our family, and then we get influenced by the rest of the world as we move on. In talking with Mark earlier, we were talking about the world, about our country, about the tough times going on in different places. And we agreed, you know, there's always been tough times, and there are going to be tough times ahead. But the good news is, there's always been good people, good effort around this world. And as long as the good people keep outnumbering those that aren't smart enough to do things in a correct fashion, as long as we continue trying, we're going to be all right. This planet's going to go on, buddy. I can't help but try to explain to you how I feel so lucky being here, because I know it's a gift. I thank the powers that be. I thank my God. We have different names in various religions for our spiritual leader. Well, over the years, I've learned whatever name we choose to call our spiritual leader, I don't know any spiritual leaders or of one that would dare condone the ugliness that we see that happens throughout the world. I need my God on a daily basis. I thank the good Lord. Oh, man, I was blessed with 2 guardian angels. Mark talking about being raised a Catholic, you know, we have this thing called, we're blessed with a guardian angel. Well, being a Gemini, I was blessed with 2 guardian angels. And folks, when I was running around here in New York, up and down Broadway, and trying to play football to them at 4 o'clock in the morning, I know I needed help. And it wasn't because of old Joe getting back home safely every night either. I can visualize my 2 guardian angels sitting here on my shoulders right now, long white beards, long, just tuckered out, man. And I'm just so thankful. I have recognized over the years when I go from place to place, someone will get a smile on their face. Hey, Broadway, oh, Joe, you know. And there were times early on, you know, it's, yeah, you know, I just want to try and shuffle off to the side. But then I realized what a blessing it is. There were smiles, the good vibes that I get moving around, and then taking on a responsibility of actually trying to help out. Actually trying to lift somebody up during the day, help the charities. You see, as an athlete, I did learn the sport of football is a team game. It's a team effort. We do very little on our own. Well, you know what? In the big game of life, that's a fact, Jack. We don't do much on our own. We share responsibilities. We need teammates to help us along, to pick us up. Life itself is a team effort. And the more we individually realize that, I think the better we will be cohesive in getting along in our society. Now then, are there any Jet fans in here? Yeah, all right. Are there any Giant fans in here? Yeah. Well, I hope we see you Giant fans in the Super Bowl. Go Jets. Jessica, my daughter over here, and as Mark mentioned, I have another daughter also, Olivia Rose. They blessed me with a few grandchildren, 2 granddaughters and a grandson, and now my daughter Jessica is due to have a little boy in September. We pray to the Lord we're all healthy. Yeah. Mark was kind enough to mention the March of Dimes earlier and the work we've done over the years with the prenatal units and the helping the children, the mothers, the parents along, and that is so important. Sitting next to Jack, Jack said he has 4 daughters over here, right? I told him, well, my brother John had 4 daughters too, and I have 2 of them. But what I didn't tell him is there were many days, folks, I had to go outside the house. Walk out there alone and look up and say, why? Please help me, dear God. What don't I understand about these females? You know, I have learned over the years dealing with my daughters, thank goodness, they're wonderful. And kind of like Mother Nature, they have a right to change, you see. Nature all over the world changes regularly, and it took me a while to get used to the fact that, boy, you go along with what they say and what they do for the most part. And be thankful that you have them. I'll tell you, in closing, I do want to congratulate the fellow honorees, Jerry and Charlie, and when that other Joe gets here, you know, I wasn't going to say that, but that just happened. Mr. Biden gets here, boy, I'm going to be thrilled to see him too. I thank all of you, the Father's Day Committee, and the mothers too that are a part of this. Thank you so much. I'll continue to help the organization along for care for the children. Hey, any charity that's righteous, let's try and help out, all right? Take care.
Wow, that was really good. Thank you. I feel bad for Jerry Storch because he's going to follow up, but I'm sure he's going to nail it. Jackie, come on up. Jackie is Jerry's wife, is a good friend of mine. I've known the Storches for 10, 11, 12 years, and Jackie is going to introduce her husband. So welcome Jackie Storch, please.
Today, we are here to honor fathers. I'm here today to introduce you to Jerry Storch. Jerry is a Harvard guy. He has a BA from Harvard College, an MBA from Harvard Business School, as well as a JD from Harvard Law School. Jerry is a distinguished business leader with 30 years plus in the world of consulting and retail. Today, he is CEO of Hudson's Bay Company, where he oversees 10 iconic retail banners, including Saks Fifth Avenue, Gilt, Lord & Taylor, Hudson's Bay, and Saks Off Fifth, among many others. But most importantly, Jerry is a remarkable father. I know this because I am his wife, Jackie. It was easy to fall in love with him. He is charming, funny, brilliant, and handsome. I get to decide that. But his devotion to his kids were the most important. When we are together, we speak endlessly about our kids. When we met, we started with 5 children. We now have 6 amazing young adults: Rachel and her husband Steve, Gordy, Zach, Robbie, and Ben. We're so proud of each one of them, and we're truly blessed today that they're all here with us, along with my parents, Liz, and my father, Harry. It's quite fitting that Jerry would receive this award. It's something I've known about him all along. In fact, Jerry is so devoted to his kids that when you follow his career and leadership roles in retail, it follows the needs of their life cycle stages. He started out at McKinsey and became a partner there. Then, when the kids were very young and required diapers and necessities, he became vice chairman at Target. When they were children and loved toys, but more importantly, video games, he moved to Toys R Us as chairman and CEO. And most recently, as they've matured into young adults and need clothes for work, he joined HBC as CEO. And trust me, the employee discount's very generous and appreciated. For Jerry and I, family will always be our first and most important priority. And I want to thank our Hudson Bay family for welcoming us so openly. We're both so touched that so many of you are here from the team today to support Jerry. It is with pleasure that I introduce one of this year's Father of the Year, my husband, Jerry Storch.
Thank you, Jackie. A star NFL quarterback, the Vice President of the United States, a Master Sergeant, and a business executive walk into a ballroom. 2 Joes, a Jerry, and a Christopher. What do we have in common? We're all dads. In the most important way, we are the same. What does being a dad mean to me? Love and independence. The greatest gift we provide our children is unconditional love. And in many ways, that is probably more than enough. But beyond that, and sometimes it feels in conflict, we teach our children to make their own way in the world, to have the skills and presence to be truly independent. I look back on my dad, an incredibly warm, loving, and scholarly man, a famous physician, and remember what he taught me. When I head out for a big sporting event, my dad would always say the same thing. Remember, you're only as good as your last performance. Ouch. Can't imagine Mom saying that. But he was right. To this day, before a big meeting, a TV interview, anything, just a few minutes ago, before coming out here today, his words reverberate. You're only as good as your last performance. Make it good, have an impact on people. Treat each moment like it's important and irreplaceable. Go out and do it. And now is good. Love and independence. Love, The remarkable thing about love is that kids always give back way more than they get, and they don't even know they're doing it until they're older. At the end of the day, nothing is so peaceful as bedtime stories, as they listen with rapt attention. We had an original extemporaneous series of stories about boodly-bots, robots with built-in TV, refrigerator, and microwave oven, and another about Spork, Foon, and Knife, a magical set of silverware who solved mysteries at the kitchen of Chef Normand of Castle Greyrock, in the Laurentians, by the way, in Canada. Or Limbo, a particularly heroic tree in the courtyard at the nursery school who somehow managed to save the day, even though he was somewhat immobilized by being rooted in place. Or Inky and Penny, a fountain pen and a bottle of blue-black ink who were uncannily present at major historical events, including playing major behind-the-scenes roles. For example, actually drafting the Declaration of Independence when Thomas Jefferson fell asleep the night before it was due. And of course, invariably, they would fall asleep. And all too often, exhausted from a long day, I would fall asleep before finishing the stories, and the next night, they would have to remind me where we had left off. And there's nothing quite like hearing them giggle when you tickle them, or groan when they think your jokes aren't funny, and then start laughing at your jokes a few years later when they get older and think your jokes actually are funny. You know what I mean. Independence. That's a tough one. We parents always want to help, but if we do everything for our kids, they can't grow up and be independent. An answer for that has always been one word: education. Throughout history, it's been clear. Education liberates. It's the most potent force in human achievement, in a country's economic development, in creating opportunity for anyone. So I look at Steve, Rachel, Gordy, Zach, Robbie, and Ben, and see educated and/or educating souls, multiple disciplines, some Ivy League, some community college, some more liberal, and some illiberal arts, all forging a path for themselves and their future. No discussion would be complete without addressing the inevitable topic of how you strike the right work-life balance between being a parent and doing your job. We all live it, and the answer isn't easy. It isn't black and white, and somehow you just have to make it work. Clearly, family needs to come before work. As my dad said, put your work into your life, not your life into your work. Even as he rarely arrived home before 8 p.m. after his rounds at the hospital. But dang, if every one of us 7 kids didn't rush the door when the doorbell rang and welcome him home with great joy and fanfare. Not so long ago, I remember one of the New Year's Eves in our own household. We were out to dinner at a nice steakhouse. My phone rang with a true emergency at work. I stepped outside into the frigid winter, back when winter was cold, and handled the call. When I returned, there ensued a long conversation where some of the kids thought I should have ignored the call and stayed at dinner. After all, it was New Year's Eve. It was a chance to explain about responsibility to the thousands of people working for us and how the real world really works. It must have sounded to them like I was droning on and on. Our families are right to be demanding and jealous of time together, to set a high standard for when work should be allowed to intrude, or it would intrude all the time. We have to make that trade-off daily on a case-by-case basis. I am sure the work emergency was very real and that I made the right decision to take the call. But honestly, I don't remember today what the work issue was. What I do remember is that after dinner, all of us played the longest and most intense game of apples to apples ever. A family bonding game, for those of you who don't know it, going well past the midnight tolling of the new year and into the wee hours. What a warm memory. Now that's work-life balance. Family time, followed by work interruptions, followed by family time. I'm sure the 2 Joes and Christopher know what I mean. And as special as this event is, I was even more special having them at home at the same time this weekend. So I'm truly very thankful they flew in from their lives all over the country to be here today. And I'd also like to thank my great HBC family for being here as well. We speak about the importance of never losing the small company, family sense and sensibility, even as we now have 66,000 employees. And finally, I want to thank everyone for coming here today and supporting Save the Children. an organization that Mark mentioned we've been involved with for over a decade together, a great organization, and of course for honoring 2 Joes, a Christopher and a Jerry. Thank you.
You want me to ad-lib for 6 minutes? I'm going to have to get Joe Namath up here and do one. You didn't eat any lunch.
Why don't you and Joe go down here and do a fly pattern?
Richie Wurzburger's got some bad ideas up here. Well, maybe, has everybody eaten their dessert? Do you want to take a question, Mr. Namath? I don't know. We could do, I could put him on the spot.
All right, yeah. What do you folks, let's talk about something. I mentioned football. We have children to talk about, political issues.
Where are you from?
I am from Western Pennsylvania, 28 miles northwest of Pittsburgh. But I've been in a lot of locker rooms, spent time in the South, and I am a Gemini.
You are. Oh, I heard that. Right. What about? Did you go to high school in Pittsburgh?
Went to high school 28 miles northwest of Pittsburgh. Pittsburgh.
I have a lot of buddies. Oh, excuse me.
Go ahead.
No, go ahead.
No, I want to hear about your buddies.
No, I'm not going to interrupt you.
No, we used to get up to the big city of Pittsburgh to watch the Pirates play and all, but. It wasn't often. That was the longest trip I'd made growing up in Western PA, along with Canton, Ohio, until I went to college.
And how
80 miles from home.
This is fun.
That was the Canton.
All right, and then how did Bear Bryant find you?
Oh, for you football people out there, Coach Bryant had two other Western Pennsylvania quarterbacks that I wasn't aware of until I got there.
Okay.
One was a guy named George Blanda. Huh?
Yeah.
You remember George Blanda. You youngsters might not, but he was sensational. And the other was a guy named Vito Babe Pirelli. Babe Pirelli from Rochester, Pennsylvania. And we're getting ready to play Oklahoma. Political guys. Bud Wilkinson's last year as a football coach. He was going to go into politics. And an acquaintance, a relative of yours, President Kennedy, happened to be sitting on Oklahoma's side in the Orange Bowl.
That was a mistake.
Yeah.
That was.
Yes. Our center, Leroy Jordan, got to go up there and meet the president, and the president flipped a coin, and Leroy came back and said, yeah, Coach Bryant, Mr. President's sitting on the Oklahoma side. And Coach Paul Bear Bryant looked around the room. He said, well, I won't tell you what he said. But he said, we got to go out there and win. Anyway, we won 17-0, which is one of the highlights of my athletic life. Yeah.
Don't
you want to keep doing it?
I don't. Mr. Namath just said, do you really want to keep doing this? Yeah, I could stay here all day. Hey, wait a minute. Come back here.
Wait a minute. I know the president of the Jets is out here too, Mr. Glatt, and I want to know who's going to be the starting quarterback. Where are you, Neil? Where's Mr. Neil Glatt here? Come on. Be brave. Stand up. I think he left and went over to Woody's office. Yeah.
Put him right on the hot seat, didn't you?
Yeah. Well, we Jet fans. You Giant fans, I know you've got a Hall of Fame quarterback in Eli Manning, and we're still working on a quarterback with the Jets since Fitz has decided to do some things that are more important.
Right.
A guy from Harvard.
A guy from Harvard. Does somebody make sure you're taking a picture of me like this? You can put your arm around me again like you were just there. There we go. You got that? I'm going to tweet this to all 10 of my followers. It's going to be great. Thank you.
Wait, for any of you Jet fans, we talk about Fitzpatrick not signing the contract with the Jets. Well, you got to figure, as smart as he is, he just doesn't recognize that it's important to play with a good team. Last year was the first time he played with a good team in his career, and he excelled. His contract came up this year. I really believe Fitzpatrick wanted to sign, but I believe his agent was trying to get a number that the Jets wouldn't give. And I also believe that Geno Smith is the quarterback this year. He was ahead of Fitz last year athletically on the football field. Geno has grown. He's filled out stronger, more mature. I think Geno's going to be the starting quarterback no matter if Fitzpatrick comes back or not. Okay? Go Jets! Yay Giants!
Thank you.
Take care.
Thank you. 2 minutes. All right, Jerry Storch, come up here and you can tell stories about being at Harvard. You don't want to do that. No, it's not much fun. Harvard football, Harvard locker room. Here comes Dana again. Are you giving me the hook? Well, I can introduce the vice president for 2 minutes, Dana. No, you're not allowed to do that. We're not doing that. That's a bad idea, Dana. All right, well, what I wanted to say is just a couple words that I hope the vice president, I know his daughter Ashley is coming, and I'm just pulling it up. You all know, I guess, that I come from a big Irish Catholic family, and we're in politics, have been in the past. And when you're from a big Irish Catholic family, you really value loyalty and friendship. And I'm going to say this about Vice President Biden, but I don't think I've ever seen anybody more loyal in Washington, D.C., or really anywhere in the country than the Bidens have been to the Kennedys and to the Shrivers. You know, my father knew Vice President when he was a 30-year-old candidate for the U.S. Senate in Delaware and had the utmost and deepest respect for him. And my dad, as I mentioned earlier, was honored here in 1964, and I know if he were here today, he would be thrilled that Vice President Biden is getting this award because it is so richly deserved. I'll tell you just two other quick stories. When my mom died a couple of years ago, Vice President Biden called us up and asked if he could come to the funeral. And he flew up. She was buried in Massachusetts. He flew up from Washington, D.C., came in a side of the church, side door of the church, sat in about the second or third row, didn't ask to speak, even though he was great friends with my mom. Came over, shook everyone's hands, and then turned around and flew back to Washington. Took the time out of his day to come up there. A couple months later, when we had a bike ride for benefiting Special Olympics and Best Buddies, the Vice President and Dr. Biden agreed to host it at the Vice President's residence. And just a few months later, when Vice President Biden was asked to go to Wyoming for the International Winter Special Olympic Games, I flew out with him on Air Force Two. We got delayed at the airport, and it went on and on. And finally, the pilot came out and said, "Mr. Vice President, to fly all the way to Wyoming, you'll only be on the ground for 45 minutes or 50 minutes at most, and then we'll have to fly all the way back in the same day." So a cross-country trip for 45 minutes to be with Special Olympics athletes. And the Vice President, without missing a beat, turned and said, "Let's go." And we flew all the way out there. He shook the hands of a bunch of Special Olympics athletes, and we turned around and flew all the way back. That's the type of commitment that this man has. Yeah, and when he spoke at my dad's funeral a couple of years ago, all of us, obviously, at the Shriver family, were deeply honored. I knew his son, Bo, the great Attorney General for the state of Delaware, and was a huge admirer of his work in the military. Master Sergeant, you know it. And he was a great friend as well. And Hunter Biden, his boy. Just say one last thing about Dr. Jill Biden came a couple of weeks ago and spoke at our daughter's high school graduation. And Dr. Biden and her daughter, Ashley, who I'm going to ask to come out here in just a second, flew all the way to Greece for the International Special Olympic Games out there. There's a famous quote, which I'm going to read here, that was very famous for all Irishmen, from William Butler Yeats, and it reminds me of the Biden family. And it goes, "Forgetting human words," oh, excuse me, it's just blocked out. Here it is. "You that would judge me, do not judge alone this book or that. Come to this hallowed place where my friends' portraits hang and look thereon. Ireland's history is their lineaments trace. Think where man's glory most begins and ends, and say my glory was, I had such friends." It gives me a great honor to introduce a friend who will introduce her dad, Ashley Biden. Thank you, Ashley.
Good afternoon. This is the best and most deserved award that my dad has been given, and an award that I hope I have given him every day, or at least most days, by letting him know how much he means to me and to my brothers, Bo and Hunter. To Daddy, we were always first, and he always made sure we knew it and everyone around our family knew it. He was the dad that wasn't afraid of emotion, expressing it, showing it, and at ease, often a steadfast ease, with our emotions. He was the dad that woke you up in the morning with a back rub, it's true, came to sleep in bed at night when you had nightmares, and eased a broken heart with his meaningful and poetic advice. He was the dad that told us we could do anything. We were somebody, but no better or less than anybody. He encouraged our dreams and ignited our passions through not just his words, but his example. He taught us to be kind, to fight like hell for what we believed in, stand up to anyone who hurt us or others, never aim for anyone's weaknesses, and never give up no matter the difficulty we were facing. My brothers had it a little tougher than I did, I have to admit. I have always been my dad's American beauty. I can't believe I'm finally comfortable saying that in public. And I wasn't required to always move furniture, mow the lawn, clean the pool, or paint the entire house by hand. But I was required to participate in the family he created. No family is perfect, and we all go through difficult times. But to the core, my father built a family unit that, despite differences, will never turn their backs on one another and will be there to support, love, and encourage unconditionally. He taught us that if we had to ask, it's too late. He taught us how important it is to show up for people you love and to show up for life. Dad made ordinary moments extraordinary. Whether it was chasing us for hours with a water hose, taking us on adventures all piled up in the Jeep Wagoneer, the red-eyed monsters, as he calls them, which were the red tire highway lights that would gobble you up if you made too much noise while driving. His magical stories of bear country around the fires, or sitting out on our back porch during furious thunderstorms by candlelight. My entire life, my dad came home every evening for dinner and our prayers. I still remember the smell of work on his suit. It's still my favorite smell. My favorite time of day is when he came home, and it was his favorite place to be. Whether it was flying to my lacrosse games because he couldn't miss my game, nor could he miss a vote, or taking the train to Wilmington on my birthday just to give me a kiss and blow out candles with me on the tracks, only to get back on the train bound for DC so we could still make the vote. And his greatness was too powerful to keep him to ourselves. He has been a father to so many, to his staff, his constituents, and to absolute strangers who he embraces with warm and open arms. He comforts, he guides, he supports, and he leads us all to the best version of ourselves. He led this country in hopes that America would rise to the occasion with peace, prosperity, and justice. I am who I am today because of my father. He never doubted me, even when I doubted myself. He always believed in us more than we did ourselves, and his constant encouragement, his presence, and his love created a foundation that can never, will never be broken. My mother always joked that I would have a hard time finding a husband or man who would love me and treat me as special as my father did. And let's just say he's made it difficult for all the men in my life. Lots to live up to. Our father is our hero. He is the constant voice in our head that tells us to keep going. You can do it. I believe in you. Sorry. The love and bond between a father and daughter is unbreakable. And I believe it's the single most special relationship anyone can know. Through his actions, I have been given the most beautiful of what love really looks and feels like. This is a song that sums up how I feel about my father by Celine Dion, Because You Loved Me. Daddy, you're always there for me, the tender wind that carried me, a light in the dark, shining your love into my life. You've been my inspiration. Through the lies, you were the truth. My world is a better place because of you. You are my strength when I am weak. You are my voice when I cannot speak. You are my eyes when I cannot see. You see the best that is in me. You lifted me up when I couldn't reach. You gave me faith because you believed. I am everything I am because you loved me, because you loved us. Daddy, you are our hero. You're the wind beneath our wings. Thank you for recognizing my father for something his children have always known. I am proud to introduce the world's best father in the whole wide world. He is kind, compassionate, honest, fearless, and loving. My daddy, the Vice President, Joe Biden.
That's not fair. Damn, that kid can write, can't she? Before I began, as I was standing backstage, and I apologize to all of you and to Mark for being late, there was a national security meeting that was important that I attend with the entire national security team relative to what more we're learning relative to what happened in Orlando. But as I came up, I kept thinking about, I'm about to get an undeserved honor, but it's all about family, all about children. And I was thinking of all those parents of those, their children who are gone. And I was thinking about reminding, and you've been there, all of us, sitting in that waiting room. Remember what it felt like for a doctor to come out and say, it's going to be okay, hopefully. And so it's a pretty poignant moment for all of us, I expect, to be receiving this award, because it's been brought home so vividly. What I think every parent dreads is a phone call in the middle of the night that something happened to your child. And so I hope we keep them, I know you will, keep them in our prayers. And as my father and my grandfather and all believed, like all of you, there's no higher calling for a woman or a man than to be a good, or at least attempt to be, a good mother or a good father. You just saw the reservoir of love and compassion that is represented by my daughter. She is, this is a kid who did things which were a bit unusual when she was younger. Having one of her girlfriends at the school she went to say something derogatory to the guy who ran the boiler room, who happened to be a man of color. And in fourth grade, going down and finding him in the boiler room, missing class, to apologize. The teachers weren't sure what in the hell to do, whether to compliment or chastise her for missing class. But Ashley is, to state the obvious, I'm proud of her. And so are her brothers and her mother and all the Bidens. From the time she was a kid, she's been focused on how she could fix things. And I don't mean physical instruments, fix people. Led her to get her degree in anthropology at Tulane University and then a master's degree in social work at Penn. And she now runs the largest criminal nonprofit in the state of Delaware, criminal justice nonprofit in the state of Delaware. And Mark, I get phone calls like this: Dad, my people. And that's how it starts off, as if they're not my people either. But, you know, it's, this is the problem. What in the heck are you doing down there, Dad? She and her brother Hunter, who Mark knows as well, wanted to be here today. Hunter is a lawyer by training, successful in private practice, but from the time he's been a kid, he's focused on service. And between Georgetown undergraduate and Yale Law School, he joined the Jesuit Volunteer Corps, ran a homeless shelter for a year out in the West Coast. The reason he's not here today is he's chairing a board meeting of the World Food Program USA, the largest food program in the world, as chairman of it. And he's most proud, though, of being father to my granddaughters. The way it works in my family, there are my granddaughters and happen to be his children. And they resent the hell out of that, but it's true. It's true. Naomi and Finnegan and Maisie. And my son, Bo, was the one that his younger siblings and, quite frankly, all their friends and his friends turned to when there was a need for advice or counsel. When he was in high school, they used to call him Sheriff Bo. Bo was a lawyer by training, but when he became a federal prosecutor, he volunteered to go to Kosovo for a year in the middle of the war to help them set up their criminal justice system. And Mark, the president of Kosovo, came into my office just about 3 weeks ago to tell me they're naming a major boulevard in Kosovo, in Pristina, after my son Bo, which is a great tribute. He was elected Attorney General of the state of Delaware, passing up the opportunity to be appointed to the United States Senate, and because he wanted to follow his passion. He started the most copied child predator unit in the United States, unique in the country. And during his short time as Attorney General, he put over 200 pedophiles in jail. He caught and prosecuted the worst predator in our nation's history, a medical doctor who abused and raped over 100 victims, children, many of them under the age of 5. He went to every high school in the state, and we're a small state, and every middle school, spoken to over 20,000 kids to teach them how to be safe from bullying. And while he was Attorney General, he sought permission to accompany his National Guard unit because he had to seek permission. He became federal property, as you know, Sarge, and he had to give up his job as Attorney General to be able to go and serve in Iraq for a year. And like you, sir, he came back a decorated war veteran with the Bronze Star, the Legion of Merit, Delaware Conspicuous Service Cross, but he viewed his proudest achievement, his solemn responsibility, were his children, my grandchildren, Hunter and Natalie. Our family and all of yours, you wouldn't be here. It all starts and ends with our children. That's what fatherhood and motherhood's about. Master Sergeant Irving, 20 years of military service, tours in Afghanistan and Iraq, like my son, the Bronze Star, and proudest being father to Tristan and Brandon and Pierce and Beckett and Stella and Embry, a 7th on the way. Teresa, where are you? Is Teresa here? Stand up, child. If my mother were here, Catherine Eugenia. If my mother, a sweet Irish lady, Catherine Eugenia Finnegan Biden, would look at you and say, "Dear, no purgatory for you, straight to heaven." Straight to heaven. And thank you for your service as well. As the poet John Milton said, they also serve who only stand and wait. And that's real. You've stood and you've waited, and probably stood over that sink in the kitchen 1,000 times saying that quiet prayer, "Is he okay?" when he was in Afghanistan and when he was in Iraq. Well, God love you. You military, kiddo? Well, holy mackerel. I tell you what. He does? Well, I tell you what, you trained him well, kid. You trained him well. And Jerry, not only a great father in his own right, but looking out for his children, but looking out for all our children, particularly military children. Jerry, I can tell you what you did at Toys R Us made a significant difference. I saw a lot of it firsthand. No, I really mean it. Building playgrounds and hospitals where moms and dads are recovering and families trying to figure out how to cope with what was going on, reaching out and touching children who in most cases would never be touched, teaching them to read before they get to school, putting them on a level footing with children of families with more means, and you're still doing it. And Jolton Joe Namath, Joe, you gave my generation a hell of a jolt, man. I thought I was a pretty good ball player in high school and college, and I used to have this daydream. I got really soft hands, Joe, and I thought you could have made me famous. You could have made me famous if I just had a shot. But I literally tried to walk on out of school, and they were afraid to let me walk on because they're afraid they'd carry me off. So, you're an inspiration, Joe, and a real father. And Joe learned the importance of fatherhood from a completely different perspective than I did. He learned what it's like to not have an attentive father and how consequential it is to have one. And on a day we're honoring fathers, I'd be derelict, Mark, if I didn't talk about your dad for a second. As you know, I knew your dad. I knew your father. I ran with Sergeant Shriver as a 29-year-old kid for the United States Senate in 1972 when he was on the vice presidential ticket online. And your father was coming down from New York heading to Washington, and I called him. And I asked him whether or not on election eve he would stop in Delaware, in Old Newcastle, Delaware. It's called a Torchlight Parade. And because he stopped, he generated 10,000 people showing up. And an enthusiasm that I really, truly believe that held over to the next day that allowed me to win by barely 3,000 votes. And your father, the thing about your father was he was always optimistic. His heart was teeming with grace. His soul was effusive with love, and his commitment to his family was an inspiration to everybody who knew him and even those who didn't know him. I think your dad said it best, Mark, when he said, it's well to be prepared for life as it is, but it's better to be prepared to make life better than it is. That's exactly what the hell your dad did for so many people around the world. And isn't that what we all try to do as parents? Be prepared to make life better than it is for our children? Everything I learned about what it meant to be a father, a husband, a brother, a friend, I learned from just watching my dad. My dad wasn't a guy to give a lot of advice. My dad wasn't a guy that says, now sit down, son, and let me tell you. All you had to do, my father taught by example. He was a graceful, decent man. I can't remember a single time in my entire life, and I mean this without fear of contradiction, nor can any of my siblings, nor anyone who knew my father, where my father put I can't think of a single time he put his personal interest or his personal comfort before that of his children. Never once. My dad did well, then fell on hard times. That's how we moved from Scranton to Wilmington looking for work. We stayed with my grandpop for a year. Never, never, never did I hear my father. He had an expression he taught us all. Never explain and never complain. I never heard him complain. And I watched. We all watched. When he needed a new suit, but we needed shoes or a blazer for that first Holy Communion, and my sister needed a dress for the prom, it was always hers first, always us first. You know, the thing that so many people do that I observed my father never, ever did, we all tend to rationalize. Never underestimate the ability of the human mind to rationalize, particularly as a parent or as a husband or a wife. She won't mind if I miss her birthday. It's really not that important to her. That family vacation we planned for a long time, they'll understand. It's really more important I go on this golf trip with my friends. It's an opportunity. I know it's his last game, but I'd have to take the red eye home in order to make it. And he'll understand. He'll understand. So many people do it. But I never, ever, 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 ever saw my father do it. The other thing I learned from my dad was there's no such thing as quality time. My generation, coming out of the 60s, it was, well, you know, it's really quality time. When the hell has your child ever said anything consequential to you and you said, now let's go fishing, son, and we're going to have quality time? Every important thing, if you think about it, every important interaction from your child occurred because you were there. My dad had a simple proposition. He thought half of life was just being there, just showing up for your children. It wasn't until I got older I realized that it was about more than his kids. It was about what my dad needed too, something I learned I needed. Not long ago, Joe, they published I had traveled as vice president 1,100,000 miles in Air Force Two. And so I was going home with the Secret Service on a Friday to go home because to be with my grandkids after Bowie's gone. And conductors that I've ridden with for years came up and, hey, Joey, grabbed my cheek and said, what's this 1,000,000 miles thing? He said, how many miles do you think you traveled on Amtrak? It's a true story. I said, I don't know. I said, we went back and figured it out, man. What we got was the records. And what we did was you were in session, average 220 days a year. Joey, you've traveled 2,100,000 miles on Amtrak. 259 miles a day for 8,215 trips. And guys, like a lot of you fathers, you didn't go home just because your kids needed to. You needed them. You needed them. I had to do a commencement at Yale. Not had to, I was honored to do a commencement at Yale, their graduation, and I was asked to speak to in parts of this issue. And what's the secret to being successful and happy? And I kind of found the people I found most successful were also happy. A lot of successful people not happy were those who figured out that sweet spot. How to make sure you're able to fit in. Family. You go home because you all know a child can't hold that thought for more than 12 hours. And when you miss it, you miss it. It's gone. And it matters it's gone. So I learned a lot from my kids as well as my father and my mother. Because it matters. And it's the reason, this thing that makes you happy. My mom had an expression. She'd say to anyone who would listen, children tend to become that which you expect of them. Children tend to become that which you expect of them. But you can't expect much if you're not there. I realized that it was a lot easier for me to be there. People think because I was a U.S. Senator and busy, it must have been hard. I had a great advantage from the time I was 29 years old when I got elected to Senate. I never had a boss. Not a joke. I had my state, but no one man or woman could tell me if I didn't show up, I'm fired. When I ran the second time, I had missed, in 1978, I had missed 14% of the votes. I didn't miss any vote that was determinative. They were mostly procedural. And my opponent was a good guy, legitimately was pointing out, would you hire someone who only showed up 86% of the time? It's a legitimate point. So over the objection of the media people, I said, just put a camera on me. I want to do a head-on shot. And I said, it's true, I've missed 14 or whatever, it's 15% of the votes. Never one that determined an outcome. But I want to tell you, if you elect me again, I'm going to miss just as many votes again. Because if I have to choose between going to the parent-teacher meeting and a vote that doesn't mean anything, or going to the ball game, the vote doesn't mean anything, and I went on. Won by the largest margin ever won by. The point is, I had an advantage. A lot of you didn't, because you couldn't say to your senior partner, I'm not going to be there. You couldn't say, I'm not going to show up. So to all those fathers, not that many beyond this room are listening, but those fathers, let them know, even when you can't, that you want to be. Again, I'll conclude by saying that I know, and I mean this sincerely, I don't deserve this award. But other than by my father's standard, he used to say, have an expression, he said, you know your success as a father, and the same would be for a mother, if you turn and look at your child and you realize they turned out better than you. You know you're a success as a parent if you turn and look at your child and realize they turned out better than you. My 3 children turned out better than me in every way. That's not hyperbole, that's a fact, in every way. So that's the basis on which I will accept this great honor, not because I deserve it in the context of being a globally great father, but because by my dad's standard, I'm a success because my kids all turned out better. And if I said that to you before you heard my daughter speak, you wouldn't have believed me. Thank you very, very much for this honor.
Congratulations.
I'll get out of your hair.
Thank you.
I could have been big, Joe. I could have been all you.
Not yet. Thank you, Vice President Joe Biden. Congratulations. That was wonderful. Beautiful speeches all around. And a thank you to Mark. We're so honored that you could join us here again this year as both a past honoree and an entertaining, as always, MC. I want to thank Mark for all of his support he has given our organization throughout the years and inspiring us with the work that Save the Children does throughout the U.S. and the world. I'd like to report in that we have raised close to $20,000 in text to pledge and some additional some late donations come in, and we've officially broke $1 million today. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you. Some quick thank yous. I would like to personally thank my Father's Day committee. It's been an honor to serve on the committee with you. Your dedication, hard work, and commitment has been an inspiration. Frank Chalou, Wayne Drummond, Mel Goldfeder, Jonathan Greller, Michael Haskell, Mark Heller, Michael McMullen, Daniel Poggi, Leah Roberts, Elliot Rosenfield, Paul Rosengard, Sunil Sani, Glenn Shannon, Mark Schneider, Billy Sussman, Richard Wurzberger, Matthew Youngs, and of course our Executive Director, Dana Verrill, and the Office Administrator, Joan Reeves. A special thanks to Esquire for sponsoring our All-Star Dad Award and generously designing and producing the elegant invitations and today's journal. To our 2016 Fathers of the Year, I'd like to extend one final congratulations to you all. We're honored that you could join us here today. Thanks again to everyone for coming and taking the time to honor these outstanding fathers. This concludes our event. Have a great day, and happy Father's Day to all.
I hope you got pictures of the vice president's seal and the